Family Matters Season 2, Episode 24, The Good, the Bad, and the Urkel. Air date April 19th, 1991. And we got the team of Pamela Eels and Sally Lapidus writing the episode. Rich Carell, not surprisingly, directs this. Even before I saw the information, I just had a feeling that he directed this because it seems like the type of episode that he would enjoy directing.
Yeah, this definitely seems like a Rich Carell episode. He's all over it.
Mm-hmm. Guest starring Tom Bishop, Victor Wilson, and Steve Vile as Cowboy number 1, number 2, and number 3, respectively. And Ray Woodfork has an uncredited role as another cowboy. I think he had no lines, and that's why he was uncredited, because to my understanding, like the SAG-AFTRA union, that stands for Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, it's basically the union for actors. I think that if you have no speaking lines and you appear, then you are not credited, and it's all a way so that you don't get paid.
They know what they're doing. They're very savvy.
Yeah. Oh, please. Yeah. I mean, I think they have what's called, like, if you speak 6 lines or over, you get paid this amount. But if you speak under 6 lines, you get paid that amount. So, you know, lots of union stuff to figure out there. But anyway, our Hulu summary, Carl dreams that he is facing Two Gun Urkel, the most annoying gunslinger in the West. The episode summary itself gets you right ready for the dream sequence. But I usually go into Family Matters episodes blind. So imagine my reaction, Andrew, when I found out what we were getting into.
I can only imagine. Thank God I never read descriptions before I watch. I'm just like, let me just go in and see what this is. Because had I read the description, I totally would have spark noted this.
And I mean, one could argue that me texting you about the episode before you watched it, that was probably another version of you reading the Hulu summary ahead of time. So I probably ruined it for you.
No, you did it hours before, and I have no attention or memory span. So I was like, let's see what this episode's about.
Oh my God, I love that. All right. Yeah, there's really nothing else to say. I mean, let's just dive right into it. I mean, we get into the cold open, which was good. Maybe the best part of the episode for me, going into the kitchen, and I mean, it essentially sets up the conflict that Steve and Carl will have that eventually gets us into the dream sequence. But what did you think about this cold open?
I love little Richie. Oh my God, this was a great cold open. We get Laura and Judy coming in dressed up like Mama Winslow. And it's like, oh, okay, that's cute. They're doing like a little dress up thing, right? But then Eddie's like, he makes some joke about them looking ugly. And when little Richie co-signs that joke, I screamed. I was like, okay, we're giving Richie the role he needs here.
Yeah, I was confused about that for a second. It took me a while. But yes, I remember Richie and Eddie like handshaking each other like, hey, we got those girls. So yeah, I think we start off with Mama Winslow, Rachel, Harriet, Richie, Eddie. They're all doing their individual business in the kitchen. Laura and Judy. It's interesting that you say they dress like Mama Winslow. The first thought I had in my mind was like these flappers who are dressed for springtime brunch. That's what I got. I mean, maybe that's wrong, but like I felt like that with the way Laura and Judy were playing adult dress up, it just seems too fancy even for Mama Winslow, because Mama Winslow, she just always seems to have that bland grandmotherly dressing thing about her. But Laura and Judy, I don't know, with their flappity hats and their long pearl necklaces and their colorful springtimey dresses, they seem like they were ready to go out on the town in a decade that is not the 90s.
You know what? I can see that. They're going out during like the 1840s. I could see that being like really good. It was an interesting dress up moment because I just was so confused on Laura's hat with that floral print dress. It was terrible.
Well, you know, it's in character for Laura. She knows how to make it questionable with the fashion choices. And look, if anything, Kelly, as she's performing as Laura, she was really shooting for the stars with her. There was a moment where she had like an animated, serious, pouty, sexy model face during that line. Are we gorgeous or what? Like she was just puckering up her lips like, yeah, look at us, look at us. And then that's when Richie and Eddie had that, you know, little teasing thing. I think Eddie was like, or what? And I thought that it was just Eddie being confusing, but then it took me like 2 seconds for the coffee to register, and I was like, oh yeah, because or what is ugly? Are we gorgeous or ugly? Are we gorgeous or what? Or what is ugly? And then yeah, like as Eddie and Richie handshake like, hey, we got the girls. So I can imagine how much you love that moment.
It was great. Little Richie gave us a great little moment there. I loved it. And then we transitioned to Harriet being upset about the eyeliner or the eyeshadow. And I'm like, girl, she barely had any on.
I mean, look, I don't even know if this is like a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a thing. I have been with a woman who doesn't wear makeup. And sometimes I can notice really like out there makeup from women. Sometimes it just blends so subtly with them. I didn't see any like eyeshadow that really popped in my face, the eyeshadow that Harriet is talking about. But I will say that this episode, between the dream sequence and the reality, it really like stresses Harriet and Rachel's like different value sets. You know what I mean? Like, because Rachel compliments Laura's looks and she's just like, oh, honey, you look great. You can use my eyeshadow anytime. And Harriet, like you said, I mean, Harriet was the lame mother who was just like, you know what? As long as this charade stays in the house, fine, but you better not leave the house looking like that. But you're saying you're more on Rachel's side. You like that fun, sort of free experimental side of just trying on makeup.
I'm on humanity side because I think it's very terrible that we put this on girls. Like, oh, you can't wear eyeshadow because what will boys think? And that's the basis of what Harriet was going to, where, oh, this is just too adult. And it's like, how about we teach the boys to just go away and let the girls have fun? If you want to put on a little eyeliner now, as a parent, when I have a child, one of the main things they're going to know is what a day face and a night face is. I don't need you coming out with a smoky eye in the middle of the day. That doesn't make sense. But you're going to have reasonable makeup choices if you want to wear makeup.
Right. Interesting that you say that. Because it reminds me of a conversation that I had with my wife, Tony. We went to a fair over the summer, and Vermont people are very expressive during the summer. I mean, you'll see a lot of guys who are just out and about shirtless. And every now and then you may see, like we saw at that fair, a little female child, could have been 5 or 6 years old, and she's at this public fair and she has no shirt on. Now, my immediate reaction was just like, I don't know about that. I feel like we should put a shirt on. And Tony was like, you know what? She's a child, and it's not her fault that there are stupid pervy pedophiles out there. Like, it is what it is. So it's interesting, the different perspectives that we have on that, because I guess I just immediately think about, the weirdo guys that might be looking at her in an inappropriate way. But, that I think is a way of, putting that responsibility on the girl when it's like, no, that's not your fault. That's just how men can sometimes be. Disgusting.
I mean, get the men out, deport them. Don't shame the child. The child should not be ashamed for anything. The child's just being a child. And honestly, when it comes to people being shirtless, everybody should be able to go shirtless. I don't care your gender. I don't care what. That is your right as a human. If somebody's being weird, we attack the weird person. We don't attack the good people.
Well, I mean, it's certainly an interesting conversation to have. And although in this particular scene, like, I can understand Harriet's motherly caution. And of course, I'm all for and understand Rachel's free spirit. I will just say to Rachel, when you tell a preteen girl, you can use my eyeshadow anytime, be careful what you wish for, because they may use it all by tomorrow. So that's the only thing I'll say. Like, good on you for encouraging Laura to like express herself, try on different looks, but maybe, don't say, yeah, anytime, like, take my eyeshadow.
Yeah, I would be very upset. Eyeshadow is expensive. You better use a little bit of that.
How much are we talking for eyeshadow these days?
Right now, probably $45 for a good canvas. So you're going to spend some money.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, anyway, funny enough, going back to this cold open, when Rachel tells Harriet to not be such a prude, Prude, over Laura and Judy's adult dress up, and Richie misunderstands, if you remember. He's like, Aunt Harriet is really a prune? Like, Prune, the really wrinkled up fruit. Funny enough, I looked at Harriet's dissatisfied face, and it reminds me of all the dissatisfied faces that we've seen from Harriet over the past couple seasons. And I said to myself, she actually does have a prune-like face.
It's there. When you're a prude, you're a prune. That is what happens to you.
Yeah. And then my appetizer, actually, at the end of this cold open. Have we ever seen, prior to this, Family Matters ending a cold open on a cliffhanger? I was like, oh, this is interesting. This is different, because The cliffhanger comes in the form of Carl coming in all angry and dirtied up, covered in what looks like black debris and smoke and whatnot. He has the chef's hat and the apron and everything. And he is just exclaiming, somebody call 911 because there's about to be a murder. And the music plays, and then that's it. We go into the theme song. And I thought it was just a brilliant choice because you're leaving me curious as to what's going to happen next, as opposed to a cold open that's usually a separate thing from the rest of the show.
It was definitely an interesting way to end the cold opening. I didn't think it was going to carry over. I thought we were going to get something completely different. And I'm like, okay, that was a weird place to stop.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you thought they were never going to resolve that cliffhanger?
Nope. I was like, something happened to Carl, but I guess we're not going into that.
As inconsistent as Family Matters could be, I had faith in them. I was like, oh, they're going to give me something interesting. And then the rest of the episode happened. Scene 1 in the kitchen. And we are really still, thankfully, steeped in reality. This is where we set up that conflict with Carl and Steve. Not getting to Western dream sequence just yet, thank God. But what did you think about this scene 1 as Carl tells us what's happening? Steve walks in and, we're about to almost get a fight on.
It was incredibly uncomfortable the whole time because Carl looked like he was sticky and wet and sweaty. And I was like, oh, I don't like watching this. I felt physically uncomfortable for Carl.
Were you like me? Were you wondering how could Harriet tolerate this man covered in what we now find out is compost heap stuff? Like, he's all dirtied up. He's all sweaty. Like, if Carl was walking into my house like that, you take your clothes off, take a shower. Like, you look disgusting. You smell disgusting. I don't want you anywhere near my kitchen where I'm going to be eating my unseasoned food.
You were very nice to even let him in the house. I'd be like, you better go hose off outside. I don't know what is on you.
Yeah, use Dr. Urkel's garden hose, or was it Carl's garden hose? I think it was Carl's garden hose.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, yeah. I mean, we pick up where we left off in scene 1. Carl says that he was trying to flip burgers in his yard, and he smelled a terrible stench from Dr. Urkel's compost heap. And were you like me? Were you thinking like, wow, did the writers forget that his name was Herb? Because this is the first time that I've ever heard him referred to as Dr. Urkel, and they just keep on continuing to refer him as Dr. Urkel. Whereas in past episodes, when we refer to Steve's father, it's Herb.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised because I thought Urkel's dad was always a doctor, but I was surprised because we didn't get Herb and Diane, that the Winslows kind of talked about him like they didn't know him at all.
Right. And now that you say that, that you found out that he was, or that you always thought he was a doctor, now it's coming back to me. Now I'm like getting some like season 1 deja vu, particularly Laura's first date, Steve Urkel's official first episode, where I remember there were some references as to like, Dr. Urkel being like a clumsy brain surgeon. So now it's all making sense. But anyway, so we find out that Carl is confronting Dr. Urkel in his yard about his smelly ass compost heap, and Dr. Urkel isn't happy, and somehow this tiny body Dr. Urkel has the strength to throw big guy Carl onto the compost heap. And of course the family all around Carl is laughing as he's telling this story because, essentially it's a short person versus big or fat person joke. It's like, Carl, you got terrorized by a munchkin.
When Mama Winslow said it must have been a lot of leverage that he got on you, I screamed. I was like, this is hilarious, Mama Winslow. That was good.
Yeah, I think Carl was he was trying to make some excuses like, he had some leverage on me. And then, yeah, as you mentioned, Estelle was just like, yeah, a lot of leverage. So, I had some questions. Number 1, what is Steve's dad doctor in? But we've already established that was brain surgery. And let's see, compost heap. First thing I thought was the compost toilet where there's poop involved. But the internet tells me that it's defined as a pile of plant materials that are allowed to decay to create compost. So I think the Urkels have a regular toilet, but in terms of the plants and all that stuff, that's the only compost part.
Yep, most likely everybody who's listening, you have a composting department in your county, city, or wherever you live, and composting is disgusting. But I do it because it saves the environment.
That was a real transition for me when I moved to here in Vermont, when I first moved here in Vermont like many years ago, because I was just used to like sort of the Connecticut and Iowa ways of living when I lived there, which was, you have a bin for recycling and you have a bin for trash. That's it. And then to find out that there's this extra layer called composting where you normally, put apple pieces after you're done eating the apple or banana peels. It was like, oh, okay, wow, this is a really green state.
Yeah, it's a good thing. I mean, now it's even easier to compost. You can buy a composting garbage can that composts your plant products, disposable things right in your own home with no smell. Totally worth it. I will tell everybody to get one.
All right, that's very nice. I love that. I have a wait a minute moment for Harriet in this scene when Carl says he had to defend himself from Dr. Urkel with a garden hose, like after the whole compost heap throwing madness. Harriet was so dissatisfyingly shocked at the possibility of Carl hitting Dr. Urkel. And I didn't get that because I was like, Harriet, if someone was trying to throw me into a compost heap, I probably would want to do what I got to do to defend myself. I mean, it would be on. Like, you throw me into a compost heap, that disgusting thing. Like, I may just smack you with a garden hose too.
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky that's all that happened. If you throw me into a pile of trash, I'm hurting you. We have to fight.
Exactly. You're trash if you throw me in the trash.
There you go.
My God. But of course, fittingly enough, because Steve Urkel is a part of this family, Dr. Urkel seems like a very strange man because he has the strength to throw Carl in the compost heap. But then when Carl tries to fend him off with his arm, Dr. Urkel just like runs into Carl's fist and then just goes crying back to his house. Like, the way this was described, I was like, oh, okay, we went from like a 100 with Dr. Urkel to just a teeny tiny 0.
Carl's excuse and lie is so unbelievable, and I love it because it's literally the lyric from a Franchise Boys song.
Oh, really? So you think Carl was bluffing? You think this was not even true?
Oh, he was lying. He said he ran into my hand. No, that didn't happen, Carl. You beat him up.
Okay. And then now we have Steve coming in, disgusted at Carl and asking for a fight to defend his father's honor. And just as I was thinking how ironic it was that Steve was defending the father who doesn't give a shit about him, Steve tells Carl literally, like, you know I love you like a father, Carl, and my father like a neighbor.
He did. Oh my God. The part that makes this so funny. We finally get to see Steve doing his little karate fighting stance dance that I love throughout the rest of the series.
Yeah, and he did that like toward the end of the episode too. I think I described it as like he was like a frantic Muhammad Ali training for boxing almost. He's ready to go, man. He's just that anxious kid that's like, yeah, come on, put your fist up.
And what gets me, this is the first time we see this. And 6 years down the line, it doesn't change. He does the exact same thing every time he squares up to fight, except when he is Bruce Lee.
But does that count though? Because that's not Steve anymore. Is that Steve transforming into Bruce Lee in the chamber, or is that a completely separate character?
That is a conundrum that I think only Elon Musk can answer for us.
All right, Elon, let us know. Let us know as you are.
Don't do that. Elon, don't you come over here. We don't want you. Don't you come over.
Yeah, you've done enough, Elon. You've done enough. Boy. Anyway, what was it? So yeah, Steve is talking about he's having to defend his father's honor. It's the code of the Urkels. And then Carl, thankfully, does not want to waste his time fighting a little kid. So he tells Steve to go home. And Steve angrily agrees, but insists that revenge will be his eventually. And then he does this strange thing from the outside of the back porch door where he pushes his nose up against the door, the glass door, and he exclaims, "By the way, this is what my dad's nose looks like." I didn't know how to receive that moment. I was just like, okay, I guess I should be scared.
I screamed. That was hilarious. It gave us that moment for the Brady Bunch when Jan gets her nose broke. And I was like, this is so funny.
Oh, I got to watch the Brady Bunch. I've never seen that. Oh, my God. That seems like it would be a classic episode.
Watch the Brady Bunch movie. That's what you want to watch.
I'm so overwhelmed. There's like I think there's the original series from like the late 60s and early 70s. And then there's a movie that I think was from around that time, but wasn't also there like a movie that came out in the 90s?
There's the 90s Brady Bunch movie. That's what you want to watch. That is good.
Okay, I gotta look out for that. Scene 2, what I like to call living room / Western dream sequence. I have a main course and junk food alert for this scene, and I'll explain more later. But what did you think as Carl is laying on the couch watching TV, and then we transition to him dozing off and going into a dream sequence where the first words I said in my notes, Andrew? Oh, no.
So this dream sequence was amazing. I typically hate dream sequences.
Oh.
I think they're terrible, but this was good. I actually didn't need any of the rest of the episode. They could have cut out the cold opening. They could have cut out the fight with Steve. We could have just had an old Western episode, and this would have been amazing.
I'm so glad that you enjoyed it. I was thinking that you were going to like really not put up with it like I very much did, but that's good. That's good that you enjoyed it. Yeah, so, Carl is just laying on the couch in front of the TV and he's watching like the blandest black and white Western ever. I'm like, God damn, Carl, get better taste. And yeah, he just begins to fall asleep and he has a voice in his head that like mimics the complaining that he was doing in the last scene. And yeah, once we see that blurry fade, we just go into our Western. We go into our saloon at Miss Rachel's place. And now I'm realizing that the episode title, The Good, the Bad, and the Urkel, is a parody of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which was a Clint Eastwood Western that I watched a long time ago. And you're clapping because you watched that Western too?
I watched The Good, Bad, the Ugly, Dirty Harriet, Paint This Wagon, Hang Them High. I love Westerns and I love Clint Eastwood. So this was right up my alley.
I'm so surprised. That's so awesome. You said Dirty Harriet. I think it's Dirty Harry.
It's Dirty Harry.
Okay. But Dirty Harriet, I mean, my God, if we had Harriet Winslow in the role of Dirty Harry, like I would be all for that too.
That would have been great.
Yeah, no, I mean, God, there was a movie, I was thinking of another Clint Eastwood movie that I loved where he was a smooth nighttime radio personality and he had this phone caller that was like this very stalky woman and it turned into like a horror movie. I think it was like Play It Again for Me, Missy, or something like that. I watched that shit in college. It was the fucking best. Just thinking about Clint Eastwood movies. Yeah, God, let me look it up. It's a very great movie if you have not watched it. It just has like a very calming, creepy 70s mood to it. Googling it right now. Play Misty for me. There you go. Play Misty for me. And it's basically called that because this creepy woman on the phone who always calls Clint Eastwood's radio character, she really loves that song Misty. And she asks him to play for her over and over again. Amongst Clint Eastwood's Westerns like Unforgiven, which I thought came out the same year as this episode, but actually came out the next year in 1992. Yeah, Clint Eastwood is the king of the Westerns and just being that bad guy. Well, the good guy that has bad guy energy.
Yes, Clint Eastwood in his Western days, amazing. And I just love all of them. If you guys want a good Western, watch Sukiyaki Western Django. It's delicious. It's made by Quentin Tarantino, and it'll give you all that new age Western with the old Clint Eastwood feel.
I love that. So yeah, we're cut into that exact black and white Western saloon exterior that we saw on Carl's TV. It just kind of comes to life in Carl's dream as Miss Rachel's place. And I really stress come to life because the sign of Miss Rachel's place, it is just big bright colors compared to the rest of this black and white exterior that we see, and we hear that old-timey Western piano music in the background. Thankfully, we have the interior of the saloon in color. We have Western-era Eddie bartending at the bar over there. We have a bunch of Western-era men playing cards. I'm sure you enjoyed Little Richie playing cards with them and beating their ass.
It was great. I do have to go back and say I was actually very disappointed that the inside of the saloon was in color. I thought we were going to get a full black and white moment, and I was super excited for that.
Oh, really? Wow. That would have made it more unbearable for me, to be honest with you. I don't know. Something about like, having just a little bit of black and white and then transitioning to like regular color. For me, it had like the right balance of, hey, we're in a dream sequence, but we're also still reminding you that this is Family Matters in 1991 and we want to make it interesting. Yeah, that was just my opinion. So interesting that you say that. Have you ever watched and enjoyed a black and white Western? Because I feel like,
yeah,
Bonanza or something like that would be a black and white Western, because I know like Clint Eastwood, all of his Westerns are in color.
Yeah, but black and white Westerns are delicious. I love black and white movies in general. If you give me a black and white movie, one of my favorite movies ends in black and white. Give it to me.
Yeah, there are some black and white classics out there. I mean, you got Casablanca, you got Philadelphia Story, I think. Yeah, plenty of stuff like that.
Anyway.
Yeah, I'm not even going to go into the lack of logic of like a tiny boy playing cards with grown men because it's a dream sequence and I'm just going to buy into it. It's going to be great. I'll let it be what it is. Richie gave me a Jesus Christ chuckle when he was like beating the men at the card game. He physically collected all the winnings. And then he just says in his very tiny child actory way, "See you next payday, boys."
The best.
I know what you're doing, Family Matters. You're trying to make it cute and funny. And it worked. God damn it. It worked.
They're getting into their stride with Richie. They know how to use him to bring people in.
And I was actually thinking about this while I was watching. At what point for you does little Richie stop being the cute little kid? Because eventually he does grow up.
Never.
Oh, really? Even when he's like kind of in that like the preteen tween stage with 3J in the later seasons?
They were smart. We would have gotten tired with little Richie if 3J never came along because everybody hates 3J.
Some people may like 3J. You never know. We have to put the inquiry out to the audience. No.
This is the audience. If you watch the video, you'll see me do that head turn because I'm judging you.
Okay.
That's exactly what that is.
Fair enough. So back to this scene. I mean, we get to Mama Winslow. She's wearing a very purple Western era gal out on the town kind of dress. She's at the piano. She charismatically introduces Miss Rachel to what looks to be just a crowd of men at this saloon. And then, given how attractive Thelma Hopkins is, I'm not surprised. The men are greeting her as if she's the hottest thing on earth as she comes out from wherever she comes out from at the balcony. And then Rachel, she's like wearing the red equivalent of a Western era gal out on the town dress. And were you wondering if the musical number that she went into was like actually Thelma's voice? Because there were some parts of the song where I thought, oh, okay, that sounds kind of like Thelma. But then there were other parts where I'm like, that's got to be someone else. And if it's someone else, that would be ironic since Thelma is a very well-known singer.
I thought it was her the entire time, but I think I was paying attention more to her movements and the scenery as opposed to the song. Because I had to rewind it like twice for the song because I wasn't really paying attention because the costume design in this portion of the episode, I love to appreciate a good costume, and everyone looked good.
Yeah? Okay, talk about it. Like, who looked the best, and what did you like about Rachel's movements and all?
Rachel looked the best. Rachel just knows how to command a stage. If you want like a good Western feel, there's always a madam in whatever saloon they're in,
Yeah.
And she comes through and she dominates. That is like a staple in a good Western film, and Rachel does it so good. And then Eddie, his hair, his look as this bartender, and the colors. Whoever was in costume to design that day, they did their thing.
And his fake twirly old timey mustache.
So his little handlebar mustache thing, I was like, okay, I love this.
Yeah, going back to your point about like usually there being a madam at a saloon, like a question that I thought was like too grown up to ask in terms of a Family Matters episode, but you see Rachel, like how beautiful she is, how the men react to her. And automatically I thought, Miss Rachel's place has to be both a saloon and an undercover brothel. Like it just has to be. I know that's too grown up of a thing to say for Family Matters, but it just gives off that vibe. And there's a joke that happens later on that pretty much confirms that vibe.
Yeah, I mean, any saloon was always a brothel. Like any saloon, you're gonna find a brothel because the saloons are where the cowboys come to relieve themselves.
With drinks and with the P word for vagina. I was going to say it, but it sounds weird to say it out loud. So I'll just say with drinks and with respectable female genitals.
There you go.
All right. So Rachel seducing these men with her singing. I was wondering what the family audience was thinking when they saw this because... like, okay, yeah, TGIF, the great thing about it is that there's something for the whole family. There's something for the parents. There's something for the kids. But when I think of family entertainment, Friday night, ABC back in the day, watching what seemed like 5 minutes, Rachel doing a suggestive musical number in front of all these men, I'm just thinking like, that's an interesting choice for this kind of platform.
It was kind of conflicted because, I mean, we're all just scarred now. So for us, it's like, that was like an episode of Barney. Back then, people were like, you're showing your shoulders. What? So I can only imagine the reaction of adults watching it back then.
Yeah. You know what? Who knows? It could have been just fine. There may have not been letters sent in. I have not seen anything about complaints about this episode. Or people were just quietly complaining that it was the equivalent of Shakira and J-Lo at the Super Bowl. I don't know. Everybody has their interesting thoughts about what's considered appropriate. But I what kind of gave me a raised eyebrow, like as Rachel is doing her seductive musical number sauntering around the saloon, she gets to the bar and I don't know, she gives Eddie some kind of playful touch and Eddie is just fainting. And I just thought, wait a minute, like is Family Matters supposed to make us forget that like Rachel just made her nephew in real life faint from seduction?
Well, as we talked about on last episode, which y'all go back to and listen to, incest porn is a thing in America.
Yeah, I forgot. Why did we talk about that? I forgot. What was the whole basis of that?
I don't even remember. I just know that somehow we got to searching stepmom.
Yeah, I know. That's just me because my mind just goes in a million different places. So I apologize for that.
No, it's okay because the funny thing is I thought about that when this happened, but I was incredibly disappointed in that moment in this because Eddie fainting is so unremarkable that you would not notice it if you're not laser focused on the television. He doesn't make it dramatic. He kind of just fades off into the back. And I was like, is he supposed to be fainting or is he sitting down? What is this?
I don't know. I got fainting. I got like, oh my God, what a beautiful woman.
It was supposed to be, he was supposed to faint. I Googled this crap because I was like, what is he doing right now? It was supposed to be a faint, but he didn't fall. He didn't go down. It was so controlled. And I'm like, what is happening?
I mean, what's happening is that Darius needs to have more acting classes. That's what's happening. But okay, I thought it was going to be just filled with men in this saloon, but I did see one white woman off to the side as Rachel was singing at the bar. There was one white woman dressed in a blue version of the... What are you laughing at?
He did not know there was a white person.
There was plenty of white people in this episode. I mean, have you seen all the white men around the bar? There were plenty of white people.
People this whole time. I did not know there was a white person. I literally wrote in my notes, I love that we have an all-black saloon. Oh my God.
You know what? It was, hey, look, that's the power of the Family Matters cast. They make it seem like it's an all-black saloon by their presence on the show because they're first on the call sheet. But yeah, no, I mean, besides that, I mean, there were the cowboy guest stars that I mentioned. They're white people. And yeah, I mean, it's a very quick moment. And clearly this woman is not credited because she didn't speak of any kind. But yeah, I mean, she had a blue version of I keep on saying this, the gal out on the town dress. What do you call those kind of dresses where it's like it has like the furry scarves and the feathery things on their head and it's just all colorful and it kind of borders on like I'm a prostitute, but maybe I'm not a prostitute.
The hat is a fascinator. The dress is just the corset and a skirt, and the feathers is just a shawl.
There you go. Well, I mean, it takes a lot of time to say all that, so I just say gal out on the town outfit. All right. Anyway, so Rachel finishes her musical number eventually, and she just has an enthusiastic, horny men applause all around, and you know, especially the man, the guy with the beard, who she was kind of rubbing his beard a little bit, and he was like really enjoying it. I loved his facial expression there. And then again, to stress how different of sisters Harriet and Rachel are. Rachel is the fun sister. Harriet is not. Harriet comes into the saloon. And she is dressed like a very proper Eleanor Roosevelt-ish school teacher. Like, Family Matters really wants us to just, like, get in our minds that if you want fun, go to Rachel. If you want responsibility, go to Harriet.
They do. And the thing about it, I think Harriet looks cuter than Rachel. And Rachel looks cute. But Harriet's outfit, there's something about that modest, very conservative shoulder. It was plain, but still colorful. I'm like, oh, they did Harriet justice in this episode. She looked good.
Okay, well, there you go. Western Harriet trying to find her husband and is asking Western Rachel if she knows where he is. Rachel teases her by saying if she knew how to dress, maybe the husband would find her for a change. And Harriet's not pleased and calls Rachel very Western insults. You floozy, you hussy.
That's what she was. You're floozy, you're loose. If you were one of those women back then.
Yep. And I was also thinking during this exchange, something that is sort of related but unrelated. I was thinking of how white this Family Matters staff is because, like you say, like, you know, you're going back to your comment about like, oh my God, there's an all-black saloon. Aside from the Western parody Blazing Saddles that had a black lead, have black people ever been a prominent part of Westerns?
No, they're typically hung.
Yeah, they're typically hung. They may play the bartender. They may play the piano player. Like, they're usually in service industry or degrading roles. So I don't know. That's what I was thinking, was just like, oh yeah, this is very like white people to be like, hey, like let's put you in this very white universe. And I don't know. I mean, look, it could be nice in the sense of like, let's put black people in a space where black people are usually not welcome. But at the same time, it does kind of reflect on white people not writing to like more, I don't know, authentic, real black experiences.
I hope that there was a hidden message behind this. And when I say that is because cowboy towns, saloon towns, gold mining towns were created by black people. They were just mostly given the historical reference towards white people because they wrote the history of them. But I hope that was what Family Matters was trying to convey, because there's something that happens a little bit later in another scene that makes me think it was intentional for them to put black people here in a way to say, no, this is what real history is, but we're just kind of putting it under a veil so it's easier to consume.
That's an interesting point. Okay. And then eventually Harriet is flabbergasted by the appearance of Western era Laura and Judy. They are in their own version of gal out on the town dresses, and they're playing waitresses in the saloon. They're passing by Harriet and casually saying, "Hi, Mom." And of course, Harriet is looking at Rachel and accusing her of turning her daughters in this dirty way. And look, did you just think nothing of it? For me, I was kind of hoping, and it happened, but I just know that like any presence of women at the saloon, there's going to be a sexualization of them. So I was just like, all right, cool. Laura and Judy, they had their moment. Let's pass them by. I was just hoping that nothing really weird and creepy was going to happen to them from the men at that bar.
I didn't think anything of it, but then when I was thinking of men, I was like, ooh, some man is going to make this incredibly uncomfortable, which I'm happy did not happen.
Yeah, I mean, they basically played another version of adult dress up like they did in reality, so it was fine. And then Harriet exclaiming to Rachel that she's turned her daughter into, or no, she's turned their daughters or her daughters into painted women. A phrase I've never heard before.
I love that phrase.
Yeah?
I love that phrase so much.
Do you know what it means?
You're a whore.
Yeah, it's actually, apparently it's a phrase that actually, fittingly enough, it comes from the art world. And it's meant to suggest a woman who seems to suggest promiscuity. Look, Laura and Judy are very underage, and I don't know if we need to be calling them promiscuous women, but there you go. Painted women. We learned something new today.
If anybody has not heard of painted women, I will challenge you on that if you've seen the movie Titanic. If you've seen Titanic, you know what a painted woman is, and you've seen one.
Paint me like one of your French girls. All righty. Here comes Western era Sheriff Carl entering the saloon. He's happy with his gun, and he's wearing a very weird shirt with the outline of a box right in the middle. And then you have the buttons traced around the inside of the box. Was that a normal Western shirt? I've
seen that shirt in so many eras of fashion, and I've thought it's ugly every time. I don't understand it.
It's questionable. This was my first of many what the fuck is going on questions. So Sheriff Carl exclaims to the crowd of men that he's got good news and bad news. The bad news is that he shot a man. The crowd goes, as if that's, something akin to like, I didn't get peanut butter at the grocery store. Like that's the equivalent that's the equivalent reaction that they're giving. But the good news is that the man that Carl shot was Doc Urkel, and the audience just like, yeah, we hate Doc Urkel, we hate him. No immediate explanation as to why Doc Urkel was shot. It was just we were just automatically supposed to just root for the killing of a man.
Perfect reaction. If I was alive back then, I probably would have reacted the same way. Because the Wild West was all about violence. That's how you determine who the sheriff was, whoever won the shootout.
Oh man, I don't think I would have survived in the Wild West. That sounds like a very brutal existence. All right, so Carl just walks over to the bar. Harriet made me amused when she asked him, why does he have to constantly shoot people? And Carl gives us a tinge of real life when he says, hey, I'm the sheriff. Killing people, one of the perks.
No lies told. Done.
Hey, very true in the Western era, very true for some police officers in real life. Hey, I get to kill people for sometimes a just reason, sometimes no just reason. It's great.
It's all unjust. There's never a just reason, but I will say this. They predicted reality because now you can just do it.
God. Free for all. All right. So we learned that the crowd agrees with Doc Urkel getting shot because he was a very clumsy doctor. Rachel is claiming that he would perform unnecessary brain surgery, and twirly fake mustache Eddie claims that he went to Doc Urkel for a hangnail and instead got he struggles to finish the word and then Laura finishes it for him, lobotomy. That's different.
Oh, and he still has the hangnail. Ah.
Yeah. Now, I'm stupid. Hangnail, lobotomy, can you explain both of those for me? I mean, when I think hangnail, I think some kind of busted up fingernail. So what's a hangnail and a lobotomy?
I'm assuming a hangnail is a nail that grows wrong and grows into your skin. Now, I'm assuming because I don't know for sure what a hangnail is. But a lobotomy was a legitimate way at the time, and well, later on, to deal with mental health illness, especially people who were schizophrenic or people who they determined had psychosis. And what they would do, they would essentially take this long metal spike and stab it through your eye and pierce your brain. And that would cause a brain lesion in one of the nodes of your brain, and it would essentially turn you into a vegetable. And they were like, we cured that person's insanity.
Wow. Sounds like a black and white horror movie.
It's terrifying to see, and you can see it done.
Wow. All right. Well, the internet tells me hangnail is a piece of torn skin at the root of a fingernail.
Okay.
So there you go. So, I mean, you're mentioning that killing was a way of life back in the Western days. Me, in my modern era, I'm just like, guys, like, sue Dr. Urkel or try your best to just get him fired. Don't kill him. Don't do that.
They did have lawyers back then.
Yeah. And the Westerns wouldn't be as interesting if you just took someone to court or just had him fired. It would just be very, very dull. Yeah. Sorry. You got to shoot the motherfucker.
Got to shoot it out. But I do have to say, if someone is wanting a movie idea, make a Western movie with lawyers, and the standoff is who can subpoena who first, and I will watch.
All right. I might watch that too. Laura and Harriet wonder to Carl if Doc Urkel's son, named Two Gun Urkel, will find out that his pa is killed. And to be honest, I do like this running joke. All of a sudden, like when Doc Urkel's name is revealed, we hear this scary, suspenseful, dum, dum, dum music instrumental. Not only do we hear that, but we have this sort of meta satirical break the fourth wall moment where everyone in the saloon is looking around like, where the fuck is that music coming from?
That joke of the series so far. So good. That has dessert with 3 stars next to it in my notes.
Yeah. That is one of the few redeeming qualities about this episode for me, was how meta Pamela and Sally decided to go when they wrote this episode. So that was nice. And then we are getting real life modern Carl. I mean, clearly he's having a nightmare about facing tiny kid Steve Urkel in a Western duel. I rolled because I thought like, oh, this is a very adult man and a very little kid. What the hell's going on? But it's a fantasy, so we'll just buy into it. Two Gun Urkel intensely entering the saloon. He has the whistly, suspenseful Western villain music in the background. He's got his tall Yosemite Sam hat, red barn-colored shirt with the handkerchief around the neck. His white pants, did they look to you like they were made out of sheepskin? They looked very furry.
His chaps were very good.
They called chaps the pants?
Those are chaps that he has on.
They look like they look like white furry pants.
That's what chaps are.
Okay, yeah, because when you say chaps, it just sounds like, the thing, like the hooves of horses. Like, just, I don't know.
No, you're okay. You want to have chaps on when you're riding a horse, or if you're going to a leather event at a gay bar. Chaps are very important for life.
All right, I could buy that. Okay, and we get a dose of modern era Urkel and Two Gun Urkel. They're both klutzy. Two Gun cannot walk in smoothly. He has to, lean under the saloon doors because he was just struggling to get through those swinging doors. It was just like a big, big effort for him. He was just falling. He was a klutz. He was crazy.
The door flung back and hit him. I laughed so hard.
As you should. He is a fool to not be taken seriously. And then Two Gun Urkel continues his klutzery as he and Carl challenge each other to a duel. Urkel does his whirling gun tricks with his hand to show off. but that ends up with him accidentally shooting the ceiling and having a large wheelbarrow from up top drop down to one of the saloon customer tables. And so, of course, the moment that we've all been waiting for, Two Gun Urkel looking at the damage and then he nervously saying, "Did I do that?"
Nailed it. Nailed it. We're in perfection with the did I do that now?
Yep, we're getting there. But this time it's different because the crowd actually responds. They just say, "Yes, you did do that."
It was so good. This like breaking of like the norms of everybody just being in shock that something happens. They're like, "Yeah, you did it. We already know. We're over it." And I just laughed. It was so good.
Even in Carl's head, even in his nightmare fantasy sequence, we know you, Urkel. We know you. And then we get a suspenseful cliffhanger to end this scene as Two Gun Urkel tells Sheriff Carl to say his prayers because he's about to meet his maker. We get music to fit this suspenseful moment as the scene blacks out. But honestly, even with my coffee in this moment, Andrew, I was just like, if I wasn't recapping this episode, I'd just turn it off. Because, you know, whether it's a Western, whatever, I mean, hey, look, props to everybody for doing a good job with their outfits, with the acting, with all the special effects and whatnot. But I always come back to it's the dream sequences are not based in reality. They have no relevance to the story after this episode. They have no relevance to the actual progression of the characters. It is clearly just a filler episode. So I was just patient. I was just like, all right, I guess we're gonna find out what happens next scene. But hey, luckily you thought differently. You were just it seemed like you were looking forward to the next thing.
Wasn't, but I was incredibly excited that they did what I asked for, what I wanted to happen in our first dream sequence episode. A dream sequence to me feels like a waste of an episode. So if you're going to waste it, you need to go big. And that is what they did. Go big. Don't give me like the science project. I built a nuclear bomb, blah, 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 and it's still supposed to be like a real-ish scenario. No, go balls to the wall with the insanity. And that's what they did, which is what made me like it.
All right. That's very interesting that you think that. I mean, for me, it's kind of the science project, even though I wasn't crazy about the dream sequence part of it, I would prefer that over this episode because the science project was more tame, more subtle, more rooted in reality. Sometimes for me, there's a such thing as too big. And with this Western, it was just like, okay, family matters. End of the season. We're just going for broke. And they certainly did. So this will certainly be a memorable moment to come. So just like the dream sequence themed science project episode, we start off this scene 3 by going back to Carl. He's dozing off. He's kind of tossing and turning within this Western nightmare. And this is good because in real time, back in 1991, we're coming back from a commercial break and viewers who are just tuned in or, I don't know, they're so caught up in their cheese whiz for that 5-minute commercial break that they forgot what the fuck was happening. They need to be reminded that they are in a dream sequence episode. So we transition back into the dream sequence and we are standing off in the saloon. Urkel, Sheriff Carl. Sheriff Carl is a klutz even himself when Two Gun Urkel tells him to make his move. And just as Carl walks over to Steve and says, "Now looky here," his gun holder belt falls to the ground and he embarrassingly picks it back up. Both these guys, they're fools. They have no business dueling, but I guess that's the point of a Family Matters Western is that everybody is stupid.
Everybody's stupid. Nobody can handle what is going on. And Steve's holster looks so freaking heavy. I'm like, that probably weighs more than that boy did at the time.
I'm sure it did. I didn't notice that too much, but now that I think about it, it probably was like, I don't know, how big? Like, did it have a lot of guns or just one gun or?
It was big. I think it had 2 prop guns in it. It looked heavy. Like, he looked like he was struggling when he was walking.
I bet. Oh my God. Did you remember this particular exchange between Sheriff Carl and Two Gun Urkel that had a lot of D's in it? You had no call to do what you done. I done what I did because it had to be done. Well, you done did it, and now you got to die. Are you done? Yes, indeed you do. Dang.
That was good. It was a good little bit of alliteration.
Yeah, like it was almost like a tongue twister acting exercise. Like, Jesus Christ, guys, so many D's there. And there was a wink, 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 I think, to what was happening in the reality between Steve and Carl when Two Gun and the sheriff, I think it was Two Gun, was warning Sheriff Carl that he's in a big, smelly heap of trouble. That was probably not intended for Pamela and Sally, but I thought like, oh, maybe they were talking about the compost heap.
I think that they were because this is what makes me believe Carl beat up Dr. Urkel and did not have Dr. Urkel run into his hand. Because Carl acknowledges, I shot your paw, not I accidentally did it. So is Carl's dream telling us the reality of what really happened?
Possibly. I mean, how bad, ironically, a doctor getting injured and having to go to the hospital himself for whatever facial injuries he sustained. Boy, the hospital bills that Carl has to pay, that's going to be insane.
That's why he wants to apologize. He's like, please don't take me to court.
All right, so we have Miss Laura Winslow here. Fittingly enough, she's very damsel in distress to Two Gun Urkel and pleads with him not to kill her pa. And Two Gun Urkel is just like, Laura, I love you, but I have to avenge my pa because it's the code of the West. A wink to the code of the Urkels that Steve was talking about in an earlier scene in real life. And then Two Gun Urkel literally takes out a book called Code of the West. And, you know, he's all nerdy and it says like, yeah, see, Laura, says here in section 2, paragraph 3, pa avenging.
It's so good. So good. This is the insanity I've been waiting for.
Oh, really? I'm so glad you're enjoying it. Sheriff Carl is thinking that Two Gun Urkel doesn't have the guts to face him, and Two Gun Urkel gets very wordy he says something like, why would the fiercest desperado in the territory run away from a portly, pusillanimous peace officer? So we know what portly means. I've heard desperado many times, but I just want to confirm it does mean a bold or desperate outlaw. And pusillanimous, have you heard of that word?
I didn't even know he said it.
How can you miss it? I mean, my God, big words that Pamela and Sally are giving Jaleel. It was insane. Pusillanimous is not a strange animal in the water. It means that you're lacking courage and resolution.
Pusillanimous. I'm going to figure a way to work that into an insult sometime this week. So thank you, Steve, for that tip.
Democrats, you're pusillanimous right now. Goodness gracious. Anyway, all right. So I'm sure it's an intended joke that Sheriff Carl and Two Gun Urkel are dragging out their threatening talk instead of actually dueling. But I was beginning to lose patience. Like, to me, they were drawing out the suspense a little too long. And I was just like, guys, come on, get to it. My God, stop talking. Get to the duel.
I love the pacing of it because somewhere in this exchange, and I forgot where it happens, Steve laughs and he snorts.
Yes.
And then Eddie makes a joke and Steve points the gun at Eddie and says snort. And I screamed.
Yep. I wrote that down. Big words, dessert. That was a great moment for me too. Yep. Two Gun Urkel making light of Sheriff Carl's threats with, don't make me laugh. And then he does the usual Urkel snort laugh that is so hard to fucking do. And then, you have bartender Eddie behind him like, oh, what a stupid snort. And then without hesitation, Two Gun Urkel just drawing the gun at Eddie. Huh? Oh, yeah? You snort. And then you see a fearful Eddie like, okay, yes, sir. Like he does a snort that I would do, like, which is a very struggling kind of snort. Like, it's very hard to replicate the Urkel snort. And then Eddie just ends up losing breath and choking on the snort because it's so goddamn hard. It was great. I loved it. I'm so with you. It was so involved. Such a comedic surprise. Bravo, Pamela and Sally. Great moment.
It was good. It sounded like Eddie hurt himself trying to do the snort, and that made it even funnier.
Yeah. Like me just doing it right now, it's like, oh my God, I need to sit down and get like a breathalyzer or something, because it's just, how does Jaleel do it? Literally. And I know a breathalyzer means like when you're drunk, but you know what I mean? A breathing machine, a breather. What's a breathing machine called?
Respirator.
Oh,
you'll feel like you're dying either way. So that's why it's funny.
Okay, fair enough. All right. So when Two Gun Urkel is making me think we're finally starting this duel, he threatens Sheriff Carl to make like a mallard and duck. And then he just ends up shooting a bunch of bottles behind a ducking bartender, Eddie. Again, guys, I'm just telling you to shut the hell up and start shooting each other. But yeah, I don't know. You probably have watched more Westerns than I have, Andrew. Is this the typical thing where they really draw out the talk for a while before they get to the actual duel?
Definitely, because, I mean, put it in real life scenario, you're going to draw out your murder. Like, you don't want to die quickly because somebody is going to die here. So you're going to talk as much trash as you can to try to hold off that gunfight. Procrastinating on your murder, not a good thing, people. Get to it.
God, I would know. I'm a terrible procrastinator. All right, so Carl is bragging about his shooting skills by telling his mama, of all people, within the crowd to duck so he can shoot lit candles besides the piano. All right. They're braggadocio. they're doing what they got to do. I want it to happen now. And needless to say, I thought that the duel would happen in this scene. It did not. So I was like, fuck, are you kidding me? They're scheduling the duel, Andrew. They're scheduling the duel. Like it's a fucking Facebook post that we have to put up for the podcast. Like, high noon tomorrow. I will see you there to kill you.
That is what they do in Westerns. You
guess.
never have the duel after noon. That's bad luck. Every Western, you have the duel at noon. High noon is when it happens because that's when the sun is at its peak and everybody knows they have their ass inside so they don't get shot.
I thought it was because it's lunchtime and once you kill somebody, you work up an appetite. So then you have to eat after.
You got to have something good to eat after you become the sheriff of the town.
How about poached eggs?
I can go for that. That could be kind of good after something like that.
Cool. I wouldn't go for it. I mean, I would rather get scrambled eggs with ketchup, but I don't know. Maybe the Western people prefer poached over scrambled.
Want to know now? I'm going to look up some Western recipes.
All right. So again, we hear that scary, suspenseful dum-dum-dum music as we wrap up this scene. Yeah, I mean, you loved it. I know you loved it. I mean, at this point, I was just like, get the fight going. I wasn't finding it funny anymore, but yeah, I could see, someone enjoying this episode being like, ha, love this joke.
It's when they play the music and everybody stops. They're like, okay, we're going to duel, but we need to find this orchestra. I scream.
Where is it coming from? Anything else for scene 3 before we go into scene 4, part 3 of the Western dream sequence, where we actually get Carl and Urkel dueling?
That is it. And for scene 4, it's a great scene.
Yeah? All right. Crowd at the saloon. They're huddling around. It's high noon. Sheriff Carl, in anticipation for the entrance of Two-Gun Urkel. And both a confusing and amusing moment happens here when a worried Harriet is asking Carl why he has to do this. Carl confirms that he has to uphold the laws of the West. Harriet wonders if the West can have simpler laws like no smoking in elevators. Rachel appropriately is asking, in this Western era, what is an elevator? And Harriet says that it's a faster way to get upstairs. Did you remember Rachel's comeback line? She was joking that, hey, the fastest way for me to get upstairs is cash. And then everybody's laughing. And I was like, okay, so this confirms my suspicion that Miss Rachel's saloon is also a brothel. And also, I was like, a prostitution joke on Family Matters? I mean, maybe it's excused because it's a dream sequence. I don't know. But I was like, okay, I guess we're doing that.
It made me laugh because I was like, we're getting all these juicy gems here. Carl is in a dream sequence, but we get a reference to our original Harriet working as an elevator operator. And I was like, I love this. And then Rachel's follow-up joke, I love a good prostitution joke. I think it was amazing.
I don't know. I was just thinking Friday night, 8-something p.m., 9-something p.m. on ABC, and network television, especially back then, was pretty tame and wanted to appeal to the mass audience as much as possible. I'm just surprised that Family Matters could get away with that. And then I'm so glad that you mentioned the Harriet working as an elevator operator, because season 1 seems like a million years ago. That happened. She used to work as an elevator operator. So yeah, that's a reference that I did not catch. Thank you for pointing that out. So the grandfather clock at the saloon comes to high noon, and we hear over and over that suspenseful, booming UWE Undertaker entrance alarm. Do you even call it an alarm? What do you call it when it's like an old style grandfather clock? What do you?
I don't even know. Would you call it the chime? I don't know what it would be called from a grandfather clock.
That alarm could have stopped after 2 sounds, but they were just like boom, boom. They did it for a long time. And Urkel doesn't come through the exterior entrance as expected, but he just clumsily comes from the bathroom. He has that post-poop walk, that particular klutzy post-poop walk where you're wondering if the person didn't wipe as well as they should have. And they're just I'm scratching my leg. And he's just telling Carl, sorry, there was a long line at the little cowpokes room. So there you go. Urkel. And look, hey, when you're about to kill somebody, I would understand taking a nervous poo.
Yeah, I mean, if you're about to die, pee and poop before you die. It evacuates your body once you're done, and you don't want to leave a mess.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. I was going to say I have experience with that, but I do not. I'm very much alive. I've not killed anybody. Sorry, that would have been a weird thing to admit on this podcast. Hey, I have experience killing people and then watching their shit come out.
That got dark quickly, and leave that in because I love it.
All right, fine. Fair enough. I will reveal my secrets to the world. All right. Anyway, so did you like that moment where Sheriff and Two Gun Urkel they're physically sizing each other up? They're doing that walk, like I'm gonna size you up, and they're doing this synchronicity thing. They're just like walking very suspiciously, looking at each other. They're doing this dance, like I'm ready for this guy. What's his next move gonna be? And then the crowd just like literally follows the same like swervy, walky, suspenseful thing that Urkel and Carl are doing.
It was hilarious. I felt very weird in the scene. This is unfortunately where you lose me in the dream sequence. Because why the hell would you do a shootout inside of the saloon? They've never done that in a Western movie. I feel like we should have just jumped the budget by $50 and filmed outside for this portion.
Yeah, actually, now that you think about it, I do think of some Westerns where they have the shootout outside because obviously inside you're talking about damaging a business, damaging a business, customers being traumatized. Like it's just a lot of risk. But nope. I guess the Family Matters production team was like, shit, we don't have a very cheap looking exterior set. So I guess we just have to use the inside of the saloon.
It was interesting. There's another thing here, and this is when the grandfather clock starts ringing. They have a poster of the Apache Kid. It's a wanted poster by the grandfather clock.
I saw that.
And I love that they had that in there, but they replaced the Apache Kid's face with a white man's face. And that was what really threw me for a loop. But this is the little gem here where I was like, was this intentionally done for the Family Matters cast to say, hey, Black people have been erased from these spaces? Because the Apache Kid, he was Native American, and there are some reports that he was possibly mixed with a Black ancestor. And on the wanted poster, they have everything that was on his original wanted poster about rape, murder, and killing. And I was like, this is interesting for them to have this on the wall so clearly to see in a children's episode.
Honestly, I do remember seeing that Apache Kid poster, but I don't know the story about the Apache Kid. Can you give me a little bit more backstory on that?
He's a Native American who decided to take his land back that was taken by colonizers.
All right. There you go. I got to look into that. That sounds like an interesting. Is that a movie? Did someone do a movie about that?
There probably is a movie. I don't know for sure, but there probably is. I wouldn't doubt it.
Okay. All right. Anyway, so Sheriff Carl, Two Gun Urkel, they finally draw their guns and shoot at each other. And it's instantly revealed that Carl gained the advantage. And now we see Urkel just holding his chest, stumbling over in klutzy pain. I have questions here. Why is Carl looking at his gun in this subtle, mortified way, as if he didn't expect that guns can kill people? That's one. And two, the way Urkel is just like, stumbling over in pain, but somehow just like finds a way to successfully just walk up the stairs as he's stumbling over in pain. I know why he's doing it, because they want to get that, shot of him falling over to the balcony, crashing down on the table. But, just to see him like walk up the stairs. Is something that you would immediately do when you get shot? Is like, oh my God. Like for me, I would just struggle on flat ground level surface. I wouldn't just be like, here's these stairs, let me just walk up to them.
I think when you get in a moment like that, I mean, if you've been hurt bad, your body's instinct is to get to safety, and safety could be anything. So I could see that happening. And then also, it is a very, very Western thing for once you get shot, if you're not immediately dead, to have this very dramatic, long, drawn-out death.
All right. Well, look at you being the Western fan. I love that knowledge. And of course, instead of just dying from the gunshot, Two Gun Urkel, this is after he's already fallen off from the balcony, crashed down on the table. He just has the strength to get up and say, I've fallen and I can't get up. That damn commercial. They're so obsessed with that damn old people Life Alert commercial.
I think they better have been getting an endorsement from Life Alert.
Beginning of scene 5, we see the saloon crowd huddle around a fallen Urkel as if he's no longer the villain they wanted dead. They're just suddenly looking at him like, oh my God, he might be really dead. Is he okay? So that confused me. And the part where I chuckled is where Carl was like, oh God, Two Gun. Oh my God, you're down. Let me get Doc Urkel. And then he remembered, yeah, I killed him yesterday.
So the way they wrote this episode, I think without giving too much away, they're like, okay, we're in a dream sequence. We've gotten super crazy, but now we need to bring it back to reality of what really prompted this dream, which was Carl's guilt. So now we're experiencing the guilt that Carl's feeling in dream form.
That makes sense to me, because if we're just going by Sheriff Carl, what his character is supposed to be, what his objectives usually are, because in the dream, at least up until now, he's been simply, okay, Doc Urkel, enemy. Two-gun Urkel, enemy. Take them both out. That's it. Like, that's the impression that I got up until this moment. And now I think it's very valid what you say, that this is like reality Carl coming in and he's feeling that guilt. And now he sees the humanity in Two-Gun Urkel. And now he's just like, fuck, what did I do? I actually let out a loud laugh with this wink-wink joke to reality that comes up here. Urkel, in his supposed post-gunshot struggle on the floor, calls out to his... Remember he was like calling out to his pa, like, oh my God, pa, I can see you. I can see the light. Wait, why is my pa running away? Yeah, right? It's like, oh man, even in this fake Western sequence, Daddy Urkel wants nothing to do with little Urkel.
Daddy Urkel thought he was escaping for the first time, and it's like, crap, you followed me here, kid?
Yeah, it's so sad, but yet so hilarious. All right, so Urkel dramatically passes out to indicate that he's dying, and the crowd around him just says, oh, and walks away, again, as if they were looking for that last jar of peanut butter at the grocery store. It wasn't there. Not someone died.
That's what makes it so good.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. You know, someone just got shot and is dying right in front of your eyes. That's too bad. Okay, let's go back to drinking.
I was hoping somebody would have started playing the piano and just everybody is just like having a good time. That would have been so good.
Yeah. But hey, this becomes a good running joke, you know? Urkel, like, just, you know, it looks like he's about to die. The crowd says, oh, Urkel gets up to say more things. The crowd's like, oh, wait, what? He's alive? Like, it just becomes a back and forth thing. And then we get to a point where Laura is holding Two-Gun in her arms, and he is weakly asking her to give him a kiss to send him to heaven. And Laura, you know, we're getting a little bit of real life Laura and Miss Laura in this dream sequence, where she becomes it and just plants a kiss on her two fingers and puts those two fingers on Urkel's lips in disgust while his eyes are closed and his mouth is all puckered up. And then after that unenthusiastic fingers kiss, God, what a line that he gives here. The angels in heaven won't compare to the angel I'm leaving behind.
So good. Steve is the best. And the thing is about it, it's like, Steve, why can't you say these things without being weird? If you just would just say it from a distance, we would be good.
Right. But no, you got to be your very unique, weird self. And then as Urkel claims to still be dying, but really is not. So this is when Sheriff Carl is holding Urkel in his arms. And Urkel says something like, you know, even though I'm a dastardly desperado and you're a goody two-boots, I admire you and respect you. The crowd and Sheriff Carl is like, oh, it's so sweet. Why do you have to die?
No, I was like you by this point in the episode, in my notes, I'm just writing, hurry up and die. Hurry up and die. Like, this has gone on for too long at this point.
So Carl wonders how this all came about. But of course, the easy answer is you shot Urkel's pa and you considered him a threat to everything until now. So that's how we got here, Carl. So now he has shooter's remorse. That's the thing, right? Shooter's remorse. Shouldn't that be a term? There's buyer's remorse and then there's shooter's remorse.
I'm going with it. I kind of like shooter's remorse.
I thought this old white lady was going to hang me, but no, she just wanted to give me some fruit and $200. Man, I feel so bad. I know there's no way to take that. I know this is an absolute thing I made up. No, I did not kill an old white lady who I thought was going to lynch me. I was just making up scenario that is so unbelievable to believe. No, truth is that there's a lot of old white ladies that are very innocent and sweet. No, I would not just be like, oh my God, you want to lynch me? And then as she's dying, blood on the streets, I see fruit and $200 cash and an envelope that says, my dearest John.
I was going to say, John, the Mexico tariffs sent you over the edge.
Oh my God. Look. You don't want to know what I think about Canada. We live like 2 fucking minutes away from there. I go there to get cheap dinner. I don't even know what's going to happen now if tariffs are really a serious thing between the U.S. and Canada. I don't know. It's very confusing to find out. But yes, I want to kill old white people right now. That's the point I'm trying to make here for these damn tariffs.
I think it's understandable.
I mean, think about it, Andrew. I can't get my guacamole for a good price anymore. I cannot get my Canadian donuts for a good price anymore.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, my electricity is under threat of being cut off every day at this point, and I paid my electricity bill. Do you know how annoying that is as a Black person? Where it's like, I paid the bill, ho, and y'all still wouldn't cut my shit off.
Anyway, so we have a complete what the fuck is going on laugh coming from me when Urkel finds several ways to say farewell to his life in Spanish. Vaya con Dios, adios amigos, huevos rancheros. But hey, as drawn out as this has been, Andrew, he went out with a snort. Like,
I do have to ask, if any of our listeners like huevos rancheros, please tell me where to get the best ones because it's one of my favorite dishes.
I thought that was another way to say goodbye. That's an actual food?
Yeah, it's eggs. Huevos are eggs. And rancheros is just the style you cook them in.
Why does everything sound so much better in Spanish? Like you say it in English, eggs, but huevos rancheros. I thought, yeah, that's like a nice, like, chips and ranch dish that I can find in the bowels of Spain, you know?
It sounds very elegant. And that's the reason why, and just a little break here from the episode, the English language is garbage and America is trash. So when you combine garbage and trash together, nothing sounds appetizing here. But when you put it in another language, it's like, oh, huevos. Okay, I'll pay $30 for huevos. I won't pay $30 for eggs. What?
No, but yet we are. I mean, at least some people are. I mean, I don't buy eggs, but you know, some people do. So we are having Urkel actually die. The crowd looks at Carl in shame for shooting him, as if they weren't actively encouraging Carl to shoot two-gun Urkel. Very deja vu moment. Same energy of Maxine's party back at Life of the Party, where Waldo and Willie were getting arrested, and the teenage crowd was like, yeah, y'all are the bad guys that are encouraging drinking underage, but yet these kids were having no problem getting all the booze from Waldo and Willie and having a good time themselves. It's just Family Matters has this tendency of crowds just switching up their energies. It's like, no, keep the same energy. Like, if you wanted Urkel dead, keep that same energy.
Family Matters has problems with guns. In every episode where there's a gun and somebody gets shot with the gun, they don't understand how to react after that. And this is going to be a running theme we're going to see in the upcoming seasons. So just enjoy that we got a little bit of a reaction here.
Yeah. Oh my God. Now you're reminding me. Someone mentioned on Reddit, like, because like the Family Matters Reddit page, they're like, you know, doing these thread posts where it's like, what's the saddest episode? What's the most heartfelt episode? What's the funniest episode? And a few people had mentioned in terms of like sad and genuine and heartfelt. Wasn't there an episode where Laura's friend got shot? Okay.
Yep, I think it's Maxine gets shot in the foot.
Okay. So she got Meg the Stallion before Meg the Stallion got Meg the Stallion.
Megan, I love you.
No, did she deserve to get shot in the foot? Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, because you always have that like pause look that I love whenever I say something where I'm like, oh, what is Andrew gonna say? And you know,
I love you. I was gonna go on a rant about Tory Lanez and how I'm very happy about his situation right now. But Megan, I love you. That's all I can say.
Scene 6, Jesus Christ, what seems like several million hours later, we got a sleeping Carl in the living room. He's crying out, he's tossing and turning. I'm sorry. Referencing the Western sequence in which he killed two-gun Urkel. And I'm wondering how they're going to effectively resolve all this with 2 minutes left. But Family Matters, they always make it happen. So Steve eventually enters after Carl has woken up. And poor Steve / Jaleel having to deal with a very ecstatic Carl who wakes up and is like, oh my God, you're alive! Two-gun, you're alive! And I thought that Eddie was aggressive with Steve with the hugs, but Jesus Christ, did you see Carl like just pick up Steve and give him the most aggressive, shaky hug like he was a fucking ventriloquist dummy? Like, I even wondered if that was actually Jaleel or if there was a dummy stand-in because I was concerned for Jaleel's ribs during that hug.
We had shaken teenager syndrome and it was hilarious.
Woo, boy. But Steve is still pissed off from the actual real dilemma of Carl, you know, picking a fight with his Dr. Urkel about the compost heap from earlier in the episode. And funny line from Steve when he gets pissed. He's like, Carl, stop it. This was after Carl let him go from the hug. Carl, stop it. Now's not the time to do the lambada.
Which I loved. The way he had the seriousness on his face. And I'm like, we get another lambada joke. I am loving this. Give us one every season.
And that was back at Flash Pants, the Flash Pants episode where Carl and Harriet were doing the charity policeman's dance contest. Which again, that was in this season. That seems like a long time ago because this season is so fucking long.
It feels like it doesn't end. But the best part about it, I was like, I thought that happened last season. And then when I Googled it, I was like, that really happened this season?
Yeah. Family matters. Quality over quantity, please. But hey, once again, so like Steve, when he was ready to put up a fight, my God, he likes to do this aggressive Muhammad Ali like boxing training. Like, come on, man, come on, I'm ready for you. And Carl tells Steve that he doesn't want to fight him. He intends to go to the Urkel house and apologize to Dr. Urkel. He apologizes to Steve himself for yelling at him earlier, and this was a big dessert for me. I did not know that my very last comment about this episode would be a dessert, but Carl and Steve hugging emotionally, they hear that sentimental music, and they actually are looking around like, where the fuck is that music coming from? It was great.
It was so good. This was another dessert for me. It was so good. That was the perfect way to end this episode, was with that orchestra moment. And I just screamed.
All right, so that's it. That is the end of a very, shall I say, creative episode. We may not even have the same delicious star rating. I thought we were both going to be in consensus with the fact that this is a dream sequence and it's terrible, but you may have a more generous rating than I do. So go ahead.
My rating is 3 stars.
Oh
this was a 3-star episode for me. And it's because, listen back to this episode, y'all. Re-listen to it. I advise you to do that, because we both brought up amazing points about this episode, but I only ever mentioned desserts. And sometimes you just have to treat yourself to desserts. This episode has so much craziness and fun in it that they were like, we are not going to be afraid to push the boundaries so fully that all the corniness of it is still funny. And I have to say, this episode, I laughed at this episode more than any other episode. This was like the funniest moment in the series so far to me. And I feel like it rightfully deserves that 3 stars for me, because typically if I'm watching a Family Matters episode, when Steve comes on scene at this point, I'm kind of like, okay, what's happening on TikTok? I'll just rewind it and go back to Steve again.
Yeah.
And this time I was like, no, I want this. All of this together, it was chef's kiss good.
Wow. All right. Well, there you go. You know what? Maybe I should pat myself on the back, because I gave you such low expectations coming in. And when you start from like ground level low expectations, you can often be surprised that you like it as much as you did. And there you go. So I'm glad you liked the episode. That's great. So I will take your 3 out of 3 stars. I will add a point, and then I will add a 0 before the 3. Or the 0 before the point 3. You get it. 0.3 out of 3. That's what I meant to say. I was trying to be all clever and stuff, and it wasn't working out. Yeah, 0.3 out of 3 for me. This was, let's start with the 0.3 part of it. The 0.3 of the 0.3 rating, the meta, self-referential, winky wink satire moments of the Western crowd's reaction to the dum 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 music, Steve and Carl's reaction to their sentimental hug. That was great. Loved that. Interesting how Family Matters has that awareness of tropes that they use. They're telling us as the audience, like, hey, we know that we would use all these ridiculous sitcom conventions, but yet somehow they still genuinely do it as if they're not aware of it. It's an interesting language that they're giving to us. And I think it kind of reflects that 90s era of like irony coming into fruition. Like, I think that there was a lot more earnestness, probably going back to the 80s, 70s, 60s, whatever. But certainly with shows like The Simpsons, David Letterman's late night show in the 90s, all that stuff, like we got to that age where it was like cynicism, irony. We're kind of aware of things that are conventional and predictable and cliche and come off as phony. And Family Matters has this interesting bridge where it's like, all right, we're going to give you the genuine family TGIF style sitcom, but every now and then we're going to be like, yeah, we know what we're doing is ridiculous. I like that. I like that balance. So I'm interested to see how far they take that. The snort, laugh, gun threat moment between Two Gun Urkel and Eddie. You and I loved that. That was definitely the best dessert of the episode for me. I thought it was a brilliant moment. I always love a way to go, Carl, from Mama Winslow. That was wonderful. That all being said, where the 0 comes in is just, you know what? I don't like a dream sequence. Once you introduce me to a dream sequence, it's just junk food for me. My main course of it all is just wondering what is the point of it as it relates to the reality of the characters going forward. How does it affect their progress? How does it move their story forward? And the answer is that it doesn't. It's clearly just meant to be a filler episode. Like, hey, we have a contract for this many episodes in a season, and we are running out of ideas at this point, so let's just put some silly thing in because we gotta fulfill our contract. And unfortunately, that kind of mindset can produce clunkers, can produce questionable things. And I'm sure that Pamela, Sally, the rest of the Family Matters production team, I'm sure they have no problem admitting that, like, hey, we had to produce 200 plus episodes. There's going to be some clunkers because we just had to fill time. But again, the unfortunate part of it is just you get that quantity over quality aspect. And I'm so glad that we're in a streaming era now where it's the other way around, where we have like shorter 8 to 10 episode seasons where you have time to produce quality work and you give us so little of it that we want more and more, as opposed to what may happen if we continue doing Family Matters, which is like, I've had more than enough. So I don't know. I mean, can you imagine a reality where Family Matters had like 8 to 10 episode seasons? Do you think that would have made the show a lot better?
I do think it would have made the show a lot better. And I say that because I like that Family Matters isn't one of the sitcoms that was out back then where the joke was explained within the joke. I find that to be so disrespectful to the audience. I love when you throw us a gem of a joke and we have to interpret it on our own and comprehend it, as opposed to the joke being explained through the joke. I just never liked that. So I think that if they were able to keep that same dynamic and squeeze it down to 12 episodes that maybe are an hour long each, it would have been better.
All right. That could be an interesting reality. So that's it. Not my favorite episode at all. And wow. I mean, Judy Winslow Matters on Instagram warned us, because I had mentioned in our promo for, I think it was the Finding the Words episode where Perry and Rachel meet their dad that we never see again. I did mention that, like, oh my God, between Finding the Words and Fight the Good Fight, we have 2 heavy episodes within 2 weeks. And then Judy Winslow Matters on Instagram was like, oh, well, just wait until you get to the season finale. That's another heavy one. And it has something to do with like Carl being guilty over shooting a friend or maybe a police officer. I don't know. Carl feels guilty over shooting somebody, which is interesting because he felt guilty in a fantasy sequence over shooting Urkel, and now in real life he's gonna feel guilty for shooting somebody. So it's like, oh, okay, so we're having a much heavier version of what we already witnessed in the Western sequence episode. And also, again, let me stress, the Family Matters writers need to take summer break because they're fried.
Okay, so I watched it.
You did?
I watched it right after I watched this episode. And this is going to be a very interesting conversation for our next episode. So y'all better tune in and listen. Because that episode, we have some things. In Family Matters, I'm a little upset at you because this episode should have been the finale of the season.
Oh, well, yeah, it is, isn't it? It is a season finale.
The episode we're talking about right now should be the finale for this season.
Oh, the Western Dream sequence episode that we just... Oh, you think that...
This should have ended the season. This should have been the last episode of the season. We do not need next week's episode.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
That is how I feel. I'm not going to give away anything. It does not tell you what my rating is for the episode, but I do feel that we should have stopped the season at this episode. This would have been a great point to take a break.
All right. I'm very curious now. So hopefully you'll join us. We finally wrap up season 2 next week. Delicious. Please listen, subscribe, follow, rate, review The Delicious Recap wherever you get your podcasts. TheDeliciousRecap@gmail.com. Once again, TheDeliciousRecap@gmail.com to reach out to us. Follow us on Instagram, Threads, Reddit, TikTok, Facebook. Just search up The Delicious Recap. We have a very wonderful photo design poster, whatever you want to call it, of Steve Urkel and the Living Single Cast and the Fresh Prince and Cream Savers. Find that, and that's where we are. And if you want to have early access to all these episode recaps and occasionally interviews that we do with awesome people that have worked on Family Matters, patreon.com/deliciousrecap for just $5 a month. Patreon.com/deliciousrecap. All right, Andrew, how do you get people to find you?
You can only find me on TikTok and YouTube at AJ Vandertunt. That is where you can find me. Thank you all again who have helped me become a TikTok affiliate now. I appreciate y'all. I have been featured and I love it.
What does that mean? TikTok affiliate, featured? Like, tell me what that means.
So being a TikTok affiliate means that you can make a living off of TikTok. Now, it's probably only going to be around till April 5th at this point, unless they extend the deadline again. But y'all have helped me reach a goal that I set for myself last year, that I was officially going to become a content creator making money off of social media, and you have helped me do it.
All right. Well, congratulations. I'm so happy for you. That's wonderful. I mean, you want to sign us off with some deliciousness ringing?
So this episode here was a very big kick in the mouth with taste. And I hope you guys enjoyed the deliciousness. I hope that you didn't enjoy the deliciousness because that is going to ring louder than anything.